everyone. Well, all of us need psychological resilience to get through the tough phase we are all going through. What is resilience? I looked it up in the dictionary. It's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. How can we build mental strength? Well, yoga therapy can help all of us. I am Amita from Nourish Talk, a platform for natural and holistic therapies. Presenting this session, we have Diane Galliano. She is a yoga therapist who is going to navigate us to how yoga therapy can help us through the tough times. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you so much, Amita. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here and to talk about one of my favorite subjects these days, resilience. So I just want to start with the basics. Some of you may be already familiar. Yoga is the Sanskrit root of yuj, which means to yoke or to unite. And the practice, which I underline practice because practice is what it takes. You can't just do something once and then, oh, I felt better and then it was done. But in order to develop and strengthen and continuously build our own resilience, we need practice to do that. So practice of yoga yokes individual consciousness, which in the yogic language or philosophy is called the Atman, with the universal consciousness, which is the Brahman. So it's kind of like the waves that are in the ocean, and the ocean is that body that creates those waves. So the source that creates those waves. So our essential nature, And when you could recognize that this interconnectedness, there becomes a harmony between body and mind. And one of the main scriptures of yoga, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, say that the Atman is that universal consciousness, but it's bound by the human body. And our essential nature is covered by veils of darkness, which disrupts the harmonious relationship between mind and body. So when I say bound, it doesn't mean a bad thing, right? We're given this gift to move through our earthly journey. So our spirit is guiding us through that. And that's the Atman. It's kind of like that seed that's interconnected with everything else, but just like a shade, you know, if it's not cleaned, the light gets a little dimmer. And then if it's still not clean, the light gets a little dimmer. So same thing with the Atman. You could think of it as your light, your inner light. And the big source, the Brahman, is that like fuel to that light. So we want to try to get through that space, get through that darkness, so we could once again touch into our essential nature. And Amita already talked about she looked it up in the dictionary. That's one of my favorite things to do when I see words that, you know, we always hear these words, but what does it actually mean? How does the dictionary define it? So resilience, the ability to adapt from difficulties, or the ability to spring back into shape. And I have a little demo real quick that I wanted to show. So I have this card, right? Little gift card. And like when you bend the card, it springs back into shape. So I go out, I use it again, and it bends again, and it's getting a little less springy. And then it happens again, and it keeps going back and forth. And eventually there's no more spring to that card, right? It's harder and harder, and I have to like give the cashier the transaction like 5 times before it actually reads. So, so this idea of how do we keep that balance of springing back when we're faced with challenges, difficulties, or adversity. And then yoga therapy is just like the definition from the IAYT. It's the professional application of the principles and practices of yoga to promote health and well-being. That includes personalized assessments, goal setting, lifestyle management, and yoga practices for individuals or small groups. So a yoga therapist could really help you with finding your resilience. However, you have to also have agency in that desire to rebuild resilience. And the good thing about resilience is that it could actually be rebuilt. And when we talk about resilience, it's really how do we respond to stress, to these stressful events. So what are some markers for resilience? So there's a lot of research coming out now. The first one, there's physical markers, and we could look at heart rate variability. It's one of the easiest markers for ourselves to monitor. So heart rate variability measures the variation of time between each heartbeat, so which is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, the ANS. So a healthy heart rate variability has a lot of variation in it. And you could always check on your own self to test, like when you inhale, the heart rate goes up, and when you exhale, the heart rate goes down. So someone with a low heart rate variability kind of has a monotone in their heartbeat. So what they have found, these researchers from this literature review that I found, is that low heart rate variability reduces the body's ability to cope with internal and external stresses. And then according to the same article, this literature review, they found that heart rate variability changes in response to stress. They reported that the greatest factor associated with variation in heart rate variability was low parasympathetic activity, known as your relaxation response. So when we start to lose our resilience, we fall more into like this stress mode, like everything, maybe a little bit more irritable, maybe a little bit more mood swings, maybe a little bit more less sleep, digestive problems. So that's as it progresses. But parasympathetic nervous system is such an important part for us to help us relax. So we want to move out of what's called sympathetic nervous system or stress response and try to access that parasympathetic response. And then there's vital markers also. So with the breath, because the autonomic nervous system, it regulates heartbeat, digestion, and blood pressure, but it also regulates our breathing, and in turn activating what's called the fight, flight, or freeze, or stress response, the SNS, sympathetic nervous system, or it could activate the relaxation response, the parasympathetic nervous system. So the healthier the autonomic nervous system is, the faster you are able to spring back, showing more resilience and more flexibility. And that was from a gentleman named Marcelos Campos from Harvard University. It's actually said that the breathing, when you do slow, deep breathing, or very conscious, just awareness of a slower breath, that it's almost impossible to move into stress response. So we have an amazing tool right here that is accessible without having to think about it, that no one knows that you're doing something. So it's right there. In yoga, the breath is the tool that helps to control the mind and unveil the darkness that surrounds our Atman. So I love that because it's the breath, everything breathes here. So when we could kind of focus that, oh, our breath is interconnected. It's not separated from our body. It's not separated from our mind. It's not separated from everyone. So it gives us a sense of more unity, more connectiveness. Now, there's lots of studies in the mental markers of heart rate variability and resilience. So same author, Marcelo Campos, says that research has shown a relationship between low heart rate variability and worsening symptoms of depression and anxiety. Monitoring heart rate variability can bring more awareness to how you live and think. So more and more researchers now are coming up with this idea of looking at heart rate variability as a very easy indicator of how one is resilient, of how one bounces back. And a nice way that you see how resilient you are is how long does a situation last for? Are you able to spring back from that situation a little bit more quickly than maybe the last time it happened? So we're going to talk about some coping skills and some locks and keys, if you will, that will help to restore our resilience. So first of all, there's a lot of research on this, much more on the meditative and contemplative practices, a little less on the physical, but we are discovering that there's a lot of yoga postures that could really help to support this heart rate variability. So on the physical indicator of resilience, the lock is a surge of hormones. So when you're in stress mode, you have hormones flying all over the place, especially cortisol, which is, a useful hormone, but when it's in overdrive, not so good. And that could be responsible for the belly fat that develops around the abdomen. And you're kind of like maybe all over the place because you can't control what's going on. So the key to help unlock that surge of hormones are yoga postures and relaxation. Relaxation is huge. There's so much research coming out about the importance of relaxation. Yoga Nidra, which is called a yogic sleep. It's called a program called iRest, helping those with PTSD. So, these are in variations, like some people have a lot of stress, some people have a little stress, but just learning how to discover your own resilience will help to support yourself as you move through your life here and dealing with this kind of crazy situation that we all are experiencing right now. So when you get to the vital or the energetic or the breathing body, the lock is irregular breathing. So you may notice in your own self, if you get a little stressed, the breath gets a little high. If you're like, kind of like panicking, you can't get your breath. So there's some irregular breathing patterns. And the key for those irregular breathing patterns are breathing techniques. And it doesn't even have to be a specific technique. I mean, as you develop, you could get into a little bit more yogic techniques, but simply breath awareness is an amazing tool that could be done, as I mentioned earlier, could be done anywhere, anytime. No one knows. You could, if you're having an argument with someone in your household, especially because we're all kind of thrown into being with one another a lot more probably than normally, if you do have other people in your household, you could always, just take a breath. No one knows that you did that, and you help calm your mind down.
I love the way you're saying the breath is so powerful. And I think a lot of us don't understand the power of breath. And most of us look at yoga as just doing the asanas, and that's something that is so powerful. What you're trying to say, what you're trying to tell everyone is the breathing techniques.
Yes, the breath, I mean, it's our life-giving force. So, how can it not help us? It gives us our life. The physical is great because you need to move. That's really important. Our body is made of movement, circulation, respiration, lymphatic circulation, everything. And when you don't move, things get stuck. I always say, like when you start to feel the surge of hormones, kind of like sitting in a pot of boiling water. It's like, or water that's simmering and simmering and simmering and begins to boil. It's like, get up and move. That's the best tool. And then take that breath, because when you move, then you could get the breath. And very interestingly, that the exhalation is the breath that you really want to focus on, because the inhalation is like a vacuum. The inhalation, the earth, the atmosphere, the universe, it feeds us the inhale. What we need to do is give back through the exhale. And it's always hard to let go. So the exhale is like letting go. So it's always really great to begin with an exhale. If you're panicking, if you're just like in high stress mode, you want to try to get rid of what's inside before taking in, because Mother Earth, the universe, Father Sky, however you want to think of it, will give us that inhalation once we could clear out and make space for the inhale. So a very amazing tool. And then we get to mental. So there's a couple of aspects of the mental mind. When it has like ego-based, it's like the lock is anger and fear, it becomes depression, self-doubt, anxiety, all those things that you could think of that don't serve us, that just create more and more stress piling on top of one another. And the key is to quiet the senses. So if we could just quiet down a little bit, we could soothe those kind of emotional experiences that are coming up. And one of the best ways to quiet the senses is through sound vibration. So singing, it's like getting out there and like even yelling just to get that sound vibration out. It will help to clear the mind and quiet those senses. So in yoga, we talk about something called sense withdrawal, but I think it's really hard to withdraw your senses from everything. But if we could learn a skill in order to quiet the senses, then that's great. It could be a mantra, which man, mind, and tra is freeing the mind from the thoughts. So maybe it's some uplifting word that you could kind of repeat to yourself when you find yourself moving into these states of anger or fear or depression. But awareness has to happen first. And then the big picture, right? The universal consciousness or the essential nature, that Atman, the way that the lock that happens is that we consider ourselves separated, that we're not, this is me and that's you, and that's the tree and that's the dog, and that's the street. So everything is just separated, which could lead to isolation, which is really being shown that is not a very good thing on your nervous system. And for many people these days with this whole pandemic, are moving into isolation. So I'm sure that there's a lot of stress levels rising and a depletion of resiliency. So the key for this is meditation. But it's hard to just sit and meditate, but there's different ways that you could do that. You could do mindfulness movements, you could do mindful eating, contemplative type of practices, just being more aware, being in the moment, trying to get out of that past and the future. And the nature of our nervous system wants us to think that way, because the stress response is to protect us. So we need the stress response. The stress response is really good because if you want to have fun, you want to ride a roller coaster, that causes stress. But how quick do you recover from that? So that's like the kind of variable about heart rate variability or resilience. So again, going back, some of the keys to that separation lock is meditation, yoga, philosophy, like philosophy like acceptance, accepting you here, now, where you are, that everything that is here is just right. Community, so important. Having like-minded groups of people come together, that's just a really nice way to help develop self-compassion and to develop empathy and recognize that you're not the only one going through this. And self-care, right? Yes, take a little time if you can, whatever that means for you, self-care. And just finding your joy. What is it that brings you joy? And reflecting back on that and incorporating joy. So joy is considered our blissful body, our blissful state. So with that all being said, I'd like to guide you through a maybe 10, 15-minute, 12-minute practice that unlocks the physical, the vital, the mental, and the Atman, hopefully, or at least a very brief experience of that. of how we move through it. Okay. So I'm going to go into do these practices in a chair, but if you're like to sit on the floor, feel free to do so. I'll guide you a little bit as to how to alter it for a floor. But I thought that a chair is really good because we spend a lot of time in chairs, especially nowadays with probably if you're working still, hopefully, we're doing a lot of internet stuff, you know, so that's a lot of taxing on the eyes, a lot of exhaustion that way. So things that you could do to access well-being through using a chair. So the first thing that I'd like to do is to start with what's called mountain pose. Again, you could be standing if you like, or you could be sitting. So you want to start by feeling your feet. Just notice your feet connecting to the floor. Observe where the feet are in relationship to your knees. Place the hands on top of the thighs, maybe palms down. That could help give you a little bit more grounding. Or if you feel kind of heavy, if you turn your palms up, that could maybe help with a little bit more uplifting through the spine, which will help to open your breath just naturally. So see what it is that works for you. You want to feel that the feet have a nice ground. If you're sitting on a chair, the sitting bones, the base of the pelvis, those sitting bones are receiving your body weight. And then that little pressing into the thighs or turning the palms up with your hands and lifting up through the spine. You may want to lift your shoulders up and back. Maybe if it feels good, you could close your eyes. And sitting or standing like a mountain. So a mountain is strong and it's uplifted. So if you're working at the computer a lot, you know, again, that could cause a lot of fatigue, a lot of eye tension, which in turn could cause a less resiliency. So you could take your hands and rub the palms. If you have glasses on, you may want to take your glasses off for a moment. Rub your palms. And when you start to feel heat developing in your hands, right in the center of the hands, just let the hands cup over the eyes. So right here, you're taking out sight, kind of quieting that sense of sight. You might feel the warmth around the hands, penetrating to the muscles of the eyes. And then here, you can bring your fingers down to the center forehead and just give a little smoothing out across the forehead, maybe over the eyelids, maybe around the neck. So little, here's self-care, right? Self-massage, just taking care of yourself, so simple. And then maybe you even want to give a couple of strokes across the collarbones. And then let's let the hands rest down onto the lap as you're ready and notice how you feel. So we're going to move the spine in all its directions. So start with a side bend. Again, you could be doing this standing up. Take one arm and reach it up. If this is uncomfortable for your shoulder, feel free to just place it here, on the head, maybe on your hip, wherever you feel comfortable. I'm going to bring my arm up. You take a breath, and then you just take a little side bend. So again, you might not even need to do this. Maybe you just hold the arm down and just kind of letting your spine bend like a nice bending tree. You forget your head. Let the head go too a little bit. And breathe. Come up. And then just let yourself go to the other side. You may notice a nice stretch along that upper side of the body. Let's see if you could keep your awareness of breath to that area. And then come back up. Inhale. Nice long exhale. Just let that exhale go. And when you think you're at the end of the exhale, maybe a little bit more. Okay, and then we'll move into what's called a back bend. So if you're in the chair, you could just simply bring the hands to hold on to the back if you're standing up, the back of the chair, excuse me. If you're standing up, you could also place your hands on your hips, on your lower back. And then here, just gonna lift. Just lift the chest. Watch that you don't drop the head back too much. And then take those long out breaths. When you think you're at the end of the breath, maybe you could breathe out a little bit more. And then allow that vacuum action to happen for your in-breath. So you just relax. The in-breath comes. And then that slow out-breath. Keep a little bit of a softness across the chest muscles, watching, becoming aware, in tuned if you're creating any kind of tension, if any, not creating it, but if any tension is living in that area. And then bring everything back to neutral. So this is that resilience, right? The resiliency of the spine, the ability for the spine to spring back into its neutral shape, all its natural curves and uplifted. And then from here, we'll change that position to a forward fold. So if you're standing, you could fold over the legs if that's comfortable for you. Or on the chair, let's just come a little bit forward. You cross your arms and just let them rest on your legs for a few moments. Maybe if it's okay, you can let the head relax a little bit. Let's take a notice of how this forward fold feels in your body. All right. Sometimes silence is the best way to listen, right? Just taking a little silent time to hear what's going on within. And as long as you don't have uncontrolled high blood pressure or low blood pressure or eye issues or even osteoporosis, so if you're here, this is fine. If you want to take this into more of an inversion, you could try to slide one hand down your leg, the other hand down your leg, and then just let the head go. You might have to make a little bit more space in the knees for your abdomen if you feel very compressed. So now you're taking this pose into an inversion and bringing the head below the heart level, which is very beneficial to help quiet the mind. And we're going to slowly come up. So if you're forward, place one hand on the thigh, the other hand, lengthen the spine, or for everyone else, we're just going to press down and come back up. And once you come up, maybe move your body a little forward, back, trying to find that center of sitting on your sitting bones. Those, again, those bones at the bottom of the pelvis. And then we'll finish off with one last posture. So a twist, a spinal twist. You could do this on the floor, or you could do it in the chair. So you can bring your one hand. I'm going to use my left arm. It's going to come behind me, and my right arm is going to come over to my outer left leg. Want to lift up through the spine, and then just softly turn. Don't force it. You might want to close your eyes again and see if you could find your long exhale. When you think you're at the end of that exhale, just a little bit more exhalation. You can let your head turn or not. You're really focusing more on the mid-spine. And then to come out, unwind center. Pause in the center to connect to your breath. Maybe you feel it in the back body. Become aware of where you experience the breath. And then we'll take that to the other side. So the right arm behind, the left arm across, lengthen, and then just slowly turn, just trying to find a sense of lift. Focus on your exhale. And when you get to the bottom of the exhale, just relax and allow the inhale, like a vacuum, the universe, just feeding you that in-breath. And in return, you're giving the out-breath back. Right? So a giving and taking relationship, receiving and giving, and then come back to center. Take a few seconds. So we just built resilience there, resiliency of the spine. And you may even notice your heart rate pick up a little bit more. So that's good. That's good stress to cope with like the inability to spring back, but to that stress is good because now we're going to go into relaxation. So we activated stress response. Now the relaxation we're going to go into is activating relaxation response. And one of the greatest studies shows that progressive muscle movements are progressive muscle relaxation is really beneficial to help activate parasympathetic nervous system. So all you need to do is just sit back or lie down, whichever you'd like to do. Just get yourself really comfortable. You can let the hands be on your legs, and maybe the arms are hanging. And we're just going to do an abbreviated of this tensing, releasing, we call it, or progressive muscle relaxation. So just start with your hands, just spread the fingers wide. You can just keep the arms where they are, the hands where they are, and then make soft fists and squeeze the muscles all the way up the arms to hug to the bones. And then when you exhale, just let it go. And feel those muscles soften. And we'll go to the buttocks all the way down the legs, because there's a little tight squeeze to all those muscles from your buttocks, your hips, all the way down to your feet. You might even curl your toes a little bit. And then just let it go. Maybe you feel a little movement, you want to rock a little bit. So this is what animals do. They stretch, and then they let it go. Right? And then they stretch again, and then they let it go. So that's what we're doing. We're embracing our primitive, our animal self. And then we'll just do one more tensing, releasing, or progressive muscle relaxation. Let's do the face and the whole body. So you're going to squeeze your face, you're going to squeeze your arms, squeeze your legs, squeeze your hips, squeeze everything, squeeze it tight and hold it, not too tight, just right for you. And then let it all go. Good. And just sit for a moment. Notice how you feel. Maybe there were areas that were tight that you didn't even know about. So we would normally stay in this a little bit longer after that relaxation, but because this is very edited, we're going to now move into a little bit of soft, easy, deep breathing. So again, you want to sit up tall, maybe find that mountain pose. So if you're on the floor, just sitting, you don't have to come back to mountain pose, but sit on the floor, cross-legged, or any way that's comfortable. And so breathing is always really nice to close your eyes just to get a sense of what's going on within, if you like, or you could cast them down. Become very aware of your out-breath. Just see when you breathe out, you think you're at the end, can you breathe out a little bit more? And then just relax and wait for the in-breath to come. And then when you breathe out, maybe you slow it down. You draw the navel back a little bit, perhaps squeezing the air, and then just softening. So just take a few rounds to do that on your own, feeling that you're breathing out fully, as much as possible without creating tension, right? So that's the important part. And so we're just trying to use these breathing practices, the physical practices, as a means to redevelop that heart rate variability and to help us find techniques to work with letting go of stress response and activating relaxation. And now, after your next exhale, just before we move on, see if you could just feel your breath as it naturally is. Notice where you feel it, how you feel it. No judgment. It's purely acceptance, accepting that this is your life-giving force. It carries you day and night. When you're sleeping, you're not thinking about breath. So just let it be that natural. We just have 2 more practices. So is that okay, Anita? Okay. So we're just going to do something called humming breath. And that's just humming. So that's that sound vibration, right? Quieting the senses. So take a breath in. And then you're just going to hum your breath out. Try that 2 more times. Whenever you're ready, you take your breath in. Just notice how you feel after those 3 humming breaths. And we'll move into that final practice, the key that unlocks our feeling of being separated, that unlocks our cells from our essential self or true nature. And that's a meditation practice. So in yoga therapy, where I went to school, we had a lot of mudras, which are gestures or hand gestures. So we're going to use a gesture for this meditation that helps us to experience unity. So the left palm is turned up, the back of the right hand rests, and then the thumbs just lightly touch, and then the hands rest down comfortably in the lap. You may want to close your eyes or cast them slightly down. And see if you could sense this circular energy or breath, like this continuum being formed, that unity between the hands and the arms and the chest, this whole space, even all the way up to the head. Just taking a few moments to be here. Resting into your inner serenity. Sensing perhaps some inner peace. And letting yourself rest into your essential nature that's connected to all, unified. Maybe a smile on the face is very beneficial. Right. And take a breath in. And exhale just through the mouth. And notice now how you feel.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
The hummingbee breath, which you practice, I was going to comment that there is a scientific evidence that has been done on that as well. The hummingbee breath helps you sleep, which is so beautiful what you did.
Thank you. Yeah, that humming, I love that breath. It's so easy. You can make it more complicated if you want, but why? Just go with the easiness, right? Just a little humming, it's sound vibration.
Absolutely. You want to open it up for questions? I see quite a few attendees. This is a Q&A session. You're welcome to ask any questions from Diane. Just give a moment. And then Diane will also be coming back with her group class, which would be a more formal class, which we would be letting everyone know. But we want to give this opportunity to everyone to ask any questions or any yoga poses that you want to discuss, please. I've started practicing humming breath myself because, just the sleep, having problem with the sleeping, and it helped me a lot to sleep better.
Yeah, when we do that class, I'll teach a method that I've been using that is amazing to help me sleep. Just like, wow. All of a sudden I realize I'm sleeping. And then I wake up, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's stressful nowadays. All of us are trying to navigate our life, what normal life is. We all of it, nobody knows what normal is going to be anymore, and then it just
Hmm.
causes all kind of strange feelings in your head. All right, there you go. We have questions.
Okay.
Um, it takes so the question is coming. Can you talk a little bit more about the locks and key with the hormones and the belly fat? That was interesting.
Ah, okay. So when you are losing your resilience, meaning that, well, when the resilience is being depleted, that there's a higher percentage of hormones that are released. So from the adrenal glands, because the stress response is going higher. So when the stress response activates, and it's something that becomes a chronic issue, right? Stress response is good. We want that because it's about survival, but that survival you could recover back. So an animal being chased out in the wild, and gets away, it's running, its stress response is on, and its cortisol gets released and other hormones get released in order to get that, and adrenaline gets released in order so they could just focus on surviving. And but when the danger is gone, perceived danger is gone, they just go back into their relaxation response. For us as humans, that's very hard to do these days. So we stay in this kind of stress response where our resilience is breaking down, and we can't spring back quite as quickly to the relaxation response. So what happens is that the adrenaline gets released and cortisol, and there's all these types of hormones that are released in order for our survival. And those hormones never shut off. They just start releasing and releasing the more that you end up in stress mode, and you're starting to deplete that resilience. So cortisol has been shown to create belly fat. So that just is a fact in research, that high levels of cortisol will increase the weight around the abdomen, which is said not to be the best kind of fat. It's not really distributed. As we get older, we might get a little bit more fat on our bodies, but it's distributed equally. But when someone has a little bit more of a stress response, a higher level of cortisol that's building up, the fat tends to just kind of lands right in that one spot. So it's just that we can't shut off those hormones that we normally can shut off when we have that resilience, that we could experience a stressful situation, whether it's good or bad, right? We could ride a roller coaster and be like, everything is like, the cortisol's flying, all the hormones are raging, but then you come off and it's like you laugh it off and you go back to relaxation response in a way, right? Or at least you shut down stress response. It's when we can't shut it down. We lose that resilience.
Okay. We have another question. It says, with sensory control, is there a hierarchy of the senses? Like, should we
Mm.
start by focusing on one sense over another to control?
I don't think so. I think you should just, what you notice, be with it. That's
Yeah.
a really cool practice, right? It's like, oh, I'm smelling pizza. Just let it happen. Try not to react, right? You become aware. So it's this action, this thing about whether you could react or respond and make a decision, right? So it's like, I'm going to sit, I'll sit for this like sense control and, meditation, and, oh, I smell pizza. I need that pizza. And you just get up and you forget about what you were doing. So that, thoughts will fly through the mind because that's the nature of the mind. But you could generally start, if you want, with the eyes, right? That's one of the easiest ways to take out one sense, or quiet a sense, that's a sense of sight. So you could even do that palming, close the eyes. But I wouldn't say that there's a hierarchy of sense controls. Like, what you notice, be with it. If it's thoughts, just let those thoughts come. It's okay. That's nature. Can you just be with the thought without creating a story around it? Can you be with the thought just as the thought is, right? And then you find yourself, you become aware that you're engaging in the thought. That's good. My teacher of my organization where I teach, Swami Satchidananda, who has passed, he said, once you become aware, that's success. Because now you understand it, right? And then you see it again. Oh, there it is. So each time you become aware and you recognize it a little bit more quickly. That's resilience building.
I think it's hard to be with the present. All of us as human beings always think of the past, events that have happened, which have been, of course, beyond our control. And then we worry too much about the future. And that's what you're saying, and also a lot of other yoga teachers say the same thing, is trying to be present, and that's what, if you can master that art of being present in the senses, that's something that all of us, at least I have to work on.
Oh, I think we all do. That's why it's practice. It's not doing. You're not doing yoga, right?
Yes.
Yoga is a lifestyle. And, being with a yoga therapist helps you, because the yoga therapist could talk about what it is you want to do, what your goals are, work with stuff that works for you, give you experiential practices, see what really resonated with you, and then give you a plan of care to take home and work with that, right? The practice, keep practicing it. It could just be 5 minutes. 5 minutes could change your whole life every day, just a little practice. So it's just about being compliant and having that desire to help heal yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Any more questions? We want to give the viewers the chance to ask Diane questions before we wrap up. So okay, there it is. One more. You put a lot of emphasis on exhalation. I most often hear to take a deep breath in. What about breathing out helps more with relaxing?
That's a great question, because it is not a myth, but a misinformed teaching tool to take a breath in. But the out breath activates parasympathetic nervous system. The in breath activates our sympathetic, our more active. And the out breath activates the relaxation response. So when you're worked up, if your boss is screaming at you and you're like, ah, right? Or you're really upset and, you're crying, or, someone will say, take a breath in, but you have no space for a breath in. You have to give back. You have to clear out that vacuuming kind of action isn't operating right now, because the tube of the vacuum has a little blockage in it, right? So maybe a little air gets in, but if you clear it out, then the air is going to come back in. So you want to clear out and use those long exhalations, especially when you're trying to go to bed and your mind is going. Try some long, slow exhalations. Don't worry about the inhale. The inhale comes, and that will help to activate relaxation response.
I think it's a concept of letting the toxins out, right? That's how I'm understanding it. Let it out. When you say that, letting out your bad breath that has gone in due to your stress or all kind of anger or whatever, let it out, right? Is
exactly.
that?
You're clearing out the metabolic waste. You're clearing out the emotional stuff, the psychological stuff. You're just clearing it out. So this way, now there's a little bit more room for this life-giving force to enter, little bits at a time.
Yes. Any more questions from anyone before we wrap up? Okay. Well, I'll just wait for a moment before we. Okay. Well, I want to thank you, everyone, for being with us this afternoon. Please help us spread the word. care@nourishtalk.com. That's how you can reach us. Diane will be back with her group classes. Before we wrap up, Diane, do you want to say any final words?
I'd just like to say, trust your resiliency. Believe like you could just, you have the power, you have that strength, you have the tools just with your breath, at least to start with, to cultivate your resiliency, to gain back your resilience. So it's there. Take that exhale and then let things come in. Just start there and do a little movement and sing, dance, you know, that's all going to help support your own resilience and your relaxation response. Just have fun. So, but thank you so much, everyone, for taking your time to allow me to share this. I'm very honored. Thank you.
You. And please give us your feedback on the topics, on the sessions. Let us know how you like the session. You can send us an email or just a comment on the Facebook as well. Signing off on Sunday afternoon. This is Amita. Namaste.
Namaste.